Well, that was Andrew Scheer, and the Prime Minister in the daily question period today in the House of Commons, and the Leader of the Official Opposition is with me now. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming in to speak with me. Let's talk about StatCan. It says it needs all this data to provide reliable, timely information about the economy and what Canadians are doing inside that economy. What's more important here in terms of the issues? The need to produce that reliable data about the economy, or the privacy of the people they're reporting on?
Well, governments can always find justifications for violating people's rights. I don't believe that just because they've found an excuse to do it or a rationale for doing that, we should automatically say that it should be done. We're talking about detailed information, transaction by transaction, linked to dates of birth, names and addresses, and social insurance number. That's the government collecting a lot of data about you, your spending habits, what kind of charges you're putting on your credit card. And this goes beyond taking snapshots of financial situations for individuals and families and goes really into the details of people's spending habits. And we believe that Canadians' right to privacy needs to be upheld.
So when StatCan says, look, guaranteed we're not going to share it and we'll protect it, and the names get scrubbed right after we get that information, what kind of stock do you put in that?
Well, two things there. First of all, them having it is a violation of the privacy. It's not that if it somehow gets leaked or another entity obtains it, that's a breach. Them taking it in the first place is a breach. If anybody else was doing this, if a corporation was doing this or a foreign government was getting this kind of data, we would be calling this a hack. This would be outrageous.
But the law allows them to do it.
Well, they believe the law allows them to do it. We'll look at that. The second thing is, do we have confidence in their ability to keep it secure? There have been hundreds of data breaches from this government. This particular government, in fact, had to settle $17.5 million for a lawsuit where student loan data was obtained and breached. So we've got two issues here. One is the principle of whether or not the government has the right to have this information from you, and secondly, can they even keep it secure if they do have it?
Okay, I have lots more coming up on my program tonight, so let's move on. A bunch of things I want to cover with you in the time we have together. The Prime Minister's ordered a review now of the kinds of expenses Canadians pay out to former governors general after they leave office, with word that Adrienne Clarkson's racked up $1 million since she left office 13 years ago. Any concerns about that?
Absolutely. I think this level of spending deserves intense scrutiny on this. Right now, it's coming to light that many of these expenses get processed without transparency, without the ability for taxpayers to know what it's actually being spent on. We have a big problem in that. Conservatives believe fundamentally in transparency and seeing where tax dollars are being spent. Secondly is, the length of time that these programs and expenditures are eligible for former GGs, well after their term is served. Right. And I believe that needs to be we need to look at that.
So you might be willing to accept a couple of years once they leave that position and get back set up?
I believe it's normal to say to a Governor General who has served a very high and important role in our democracy, in our country, to say, okay, there's going to be some type of support to transition back into private life or into a post-GG career. But when you're looking at decades past where these expenditures are continuing to be racked up, then we have to ask ourselves the question, is this thanks to their service to Canada, or is this just supporting an individual well after the time that they've left the office?
You and other opposition leaders penned a letter to the Prime Minister saying, look, call the by-elections now. He's called one, but there are 3 remaining vacancies that you and the others want called now. It's not unusual to not call a by-election for 2 or 3 months after a seat's been vacated. What's the push here?
Well, it is unusual to have a one-off, and you're absolutely right. It's not unusual to have a period of time, but usually where there's a length of time, a delay, it's so that several can be called all at once, so that there isn't drips and drabs of by-elections. These by-elections have been known to be coming for quite some time. The by-election in Leeds-Grenville was called at the very maximum limit. He went all the way to the end, and now we believe he's playing games with.
Well, what do you think his political calculation is?
Well, I leave it to some speculation as to whether.
How about this? Maxime Bernier says he's signed up 30,000 members to his new party, and he says if the by-elections get called in the new year, he's then eligible to run candidates in those by-elections. He says he'll do that, and that might split the Conservative vote. Maybe that's what the Prime Minister's thinking.
Or maybe he doesn't want the Leader of the NDP to have a seat in the House of Commons so that he can be exposed for his failures to live up to the promises he made specifically to former NDP voters to get them to vote NDP. Either way, whatever the motivations is, traditionally the Prime Minister does not usually play these types of games, and he lets these things happen in a more thoughtful way. He's known that these by-elections in Outremont and in British Columbia Columbia have been coming for quite some time. Even the one in York Simcoe in Ontario, it's not catching him by surprise. He can't claim that he didn't know it was coming. So whatever his motivations are, that's a problem. The fact that he's using any kind of political motivation to govern the timing of these by-elections is an abuse of his power.
You listen to Max Bernier, he really sounds like he's coming gunning for Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives, and he's got, as I say, he says he's signed up 30,000 members now. You'll be in his riding on the weekend nominating your candidate to replace Maxime Bernier in the next election. What do you think's happening here? Are you concerned about what appears to be the rise of this Max Bernier party?
Well, I think you're correct when you speak to his motivations. You know, he does have a very deep-seated personal issue with me, and then he's now gone and done this, and unfortunately he's not putting the policies that he cares about first. The Conservative Party has been speaking to the issues he claims to care about. We've been talking about securing our borders and lowering taxes, growing the free market as the best way to improve the quality of life for Canadians. We believe that the greatest threat to all those things is Justin Trudeau. So our appeal to anyone who has those same concerns is to work with our party, continue to support the Conservative Party. We are delivering on those issues. We are standing up on those issues, and we have the best chance of replacing Justin Trudeau.
And does he present a threat to you in by-election?
I think many people are realizing that. The people are realizing that this is about his own personal agenda and his own personal ambitions. When you look at the issues that we've been vocal on, people see that we are fighting for those very issues. So if it's not about the issues, if it's not about the policies, it can only be about one thing, and that's the individual. And Canadians are not there to serve politicians. They're there to be served by politicians. And I think that's why you're seeing so many people coming, but not just staying with our party, but excited about working with our party as we get closer to the next election.
Okay, let's finish on this. You talk about the next election. You made a speech recently that lumped the media in with the elites and the government that you plan to take on behalf of taxpayers. How do you think you're being treated by the media?
Well, my point was, on many issues, the Conservatives have to work hard to get our voice in the story. I'll give you a great example. Everybody called what the Liberals announced last week a carbon tax for years. It was called a carbon tax until the day Justin Trudeau decided that he was going to call it a price on carbon. And then immediately all the language in the reporting referred to it as a carbon pricing scheme. So when we say, look, it's not a price is something that the market sets based on supply and demand and the cost of production. It's a tax. So the government's forcing its collection, forcing you to pay it, setting the cost of it. That's a tax. So that's an example of where we have to work extra hard to get our message out, to frame things in the way that we believe they should be framed.
Well, why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a long-standing challenge for conservative parties on these types of issues. I'm not going to speculate as to why that has happened, but I just see it as objective fact. Where we don't see our voice included in stories, where there are newspaper articles printed or stories put up online or broadcast news, where they don't have a conservative member representing our position, we will call that out. We'll say, hey, wait a minute, why'd you go to the government and the NDP and then, not to the Conservatives? We're absolutely going to call that out.
But that's different, isn't it, than like should we expect to hear the media lumped in with the government and the elites in every stump speech and during a campaign, or only when you want to point out, this morning I saw something in a newspaper and I want to take issue with it? Or what should we expect?
Well, I think you can expect that we're going to make sure that our message gets out, and that if we believe that on a particular file, whether it's one issue like a carbon tax versus a price on carbon, or if it's a pattern on certain types of issues, then absolutely, we'll call that out. Whether it's a fabricated story that the media has generated out of nowhere, or if it's a specific example where Conservatives haven't been included to get our message out, we'll call that out.
And the fabricated stories, you see them a lot?
So, from time to time you see these things that kind of bubble up, and you say, where did this come from? And you say, well, it's been reported. Well, okay, it's been reported in the media, but it's not something I hear at the doorsteps, And so those are the types of things I'm saying. I believe that the media plays an essential role in holding political parties to account, individual politicians. And I've had a very open and constructive relationship with the media. I do lots of media avails, do lots of one-on-one interviews, been on your show several times.
Like this.
I think it's an important role. My point is just that where we believe that there is a consensus of agreement on an issue that we believe the Canadian people are not in agreement with, we're absolutely going to stand up to that and take that on.
And I guess that's why we have the process we have. Everybody gets to have a voice.
Exactly.
And, hope you feel you've had yours today.
I absolutely do, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for being here.
You bet.